Well, apparently something more than plugs got under his skin. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, former Vice President Joe Biden on the campaign trail for a 2020 White House bid, has made an announcement in the last day or so in reaction to an announcement that his son Hunter made. Hunter's announcement was that he was stepping down from the board of a Chinese firm that manages, it's a private equity firm, essentially. It's a management firm, but it is backed by the Chinese government. So he stepped down from that. And then Joe Biden, and I got to read you the quote from this, Bill, because I think this is the kind of ethical commitment we're looking for from our politicians. Former Vice President Joe Biden says that in the Biden White House, he is going to ban family and friends from association with foreign operations. And this is why, quote, "I'm going to build on the squeaky clean, transparent environment we had in the Obama-Biden White House." Did you hear the end of that sentence?
I did, yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you say about that?
There you have it.
I really am dumbfounded. I don't know where to begin. First of all, it seems to me that that if I look at what I've watched the Democrats do for the last several years, right? I know I keep coming back to the email thing with Hillary, but just as an example, what I've seen certainly since the election of Donald Trump is that my thesis is that the Democrats, and I didn't come up with this, the Democrats were ruling as if they thought they would never lose another election again. And I'm sure that's what they thought. That's why they still can't get over the 2016 loss. The amount of headwind, artificial headwind, that Americans had to sail into in order to get Donald Trump elected is simply unbelievable. I couldn't believe he won either. So anyway, what's happened is that all of this stuff that happened during this squeaky clean, utterly transparent administration has been festering there. And the thing that I've noticed is that just as soon as things start to turn a light on where they are and what they've been doing, their immediate response is to swing a hot shovel in the face of Donald Trump and say that he did it. And obviously Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and the Clinton Foundation collusion with Russia is just clear and criminal. And so the first thing they had to do was accuse Donald Trump of collusion with Russia. Joe Biden's son, Hunter, very shady dealings with the Ukraine. So needless to say, Trump has to be made the person who's had the shady dealings with the Ukraine. And I'm not going to get into the Trump issue on this. But what I do think is interesting is this. Why would a Chinese financial firm hire Hunter Biden? I suspect that if the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, that they didn't hire him for his business acumen, and I don't think they hired him for his unbelievable intellect. And so if you're asking yourself—
Former Vice President Biden suggested that they hired him because of his ethical integrity.
No, that's undoubtedly it. And God knows that when you're hunting around for top executives in a Chinese company, ethical integrity is the number one search requirement. But ask yourself seriously, why would a foreign company pay for a guy as completely lukewarm and tepid as Hunter Biden seems to be in terms of his skill set? Why would they pay for him to be on the board? Why would they even make the offer in the first place? What is it about Hunter Biden that's so exceptionally important to this Chinese financial company? Is it his management skills? Is it his leadership skills? Is it his human relationship skills? Is he very, very good with making the cafeteria more efficient? What is it?
Well, he's just a board member. He's not a hands-on manager.
Oh, well, even better. Even better. So we're going to pay him, and he doesn't even have to come to work. So why? Why would they do that, do you think? And why is it, do you think, that the Clinton Foundation was taking in hundreds of millions of dollars of donations right up until the moment that she lost the election, at which point the donations dried up to the degree that I believe the Clinton Foundation has had to close? So why do you think that might be?
Well, Bill, I have another why question for you, and that is that up until this week, the line from the Biden campaign was basically that nothing wrong was done, and in fact, Joe himself was doing everything right and calling for justice in the taking down the prosecutor in Ukraine, and there was nothing wrong with Hunter Biden's presence on the Burisma company board in Ukraine, and there was nothing wrong with his business dealings in China. And for that matter, Joe Biden didn't even know anything about those things because they didn't talk about those things.
No. Why would they?
Not only is his son stepping down from that, but Joe Biden is saying in the Biden White House, there'll be no foreign operational entanglements. Why is it suddenly something that we have to guard against ethically?
There's a term for this kind of thing, and it's called prophylactic behavior. It basically is it's behavior designed to protect you. And basically what the idea is this. I would be shocked I say, if I were to discover that there were some irregularities with Hunter Biden, Chinese company, not just the Ukrainian company, and influence with Dad, the vice president, the ethically spotless Joe Biden. And so I suspect that what this is this is an announcement in advance to say that even though there's absolutely no reason to even look into this thing, we're going to step down from this because it doesn't look good. I think that this announcement is extremely embarrassing and causes a lot of people to raise eyebrows. And the only thing worse than this announcement, hearing it from the president, from Vice President Biden, former Vice President Biden, presidential candidate Biden, that his son also was influenced by Chinese companies in addition to Ukrainian companies. Funny how there's all kind of hard left-wing dictatorships, but I digress. I think that the only thing worse than hearing about this from Biden is hearing about it from the newspapers. And that's what I suspect is going on. I suspect we're going to see, through the power of the internet, because God knows the news media is not going to do it, that Hunter Biden has been what you would imagine Hunter Biden to be, given his skill set and given his apparent abilities, which is he is a nothing burger, but he is the son of the vice president of the United States, and a lot of the evidence from Ukraine seems to indicate that influenced the deal. Certainly a lot of evidence to indicate that when Bill Clinton made a speech in Russia for $850,000 for a 40-minute speech, and then restrictions on the sale of uranium are lifted by the Secretary of State, who just happened to be his wife, after a few hundred of these data points, you begin to determine a line. And what they're trying to do is to make sure that line is not visible to you. But the line is corruption. And the big way, and I have to hand it to Joe because, Joe is following a script nearly to perfection. And yet, on the other hand, it kind of detracts from Joe because Joe didn't invent it. I don't think he could think of anything this clever. This really is Goebbels.
He has been called on the carpet for plagiarism previously.
I think the person he's talking, he's stealing most from now is Joseph Goebbels. Goebbels, propaganda minister for the Nazi regime, understood that the best way to combat a perceived weakness is to tell a loud and blatant lie that is the 180-degree opposite of the truth, and you say it as loud as you can, and you keep saying it. And what Goebbels and Hitler together found out, and this is shocking, but it's true, is that the bigger the lie is, the more readily it is the more readily people will believe it.
Bill, let me suggest an alternative.
The bigger the lie, the more readily.
Alternative explanation for this. Sure. And that is that Donald Trump, President of the United States, has 3 children, Ivanka, Eric, and Donald Jr., who are business people and who themselves have foreign entanglements in the sense that their companies are doing business in countries like China and other places around the world. Bill, is it possible that prophylaxis that Vice President Biden is practicing is really just a way of turning the spotlight on the Trump children?
It's a way of deflecting the incoming accusations, as always, as we see time and time again. Whatever looks like might break. Let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. Sometimes I get a little ahead of myself because this is just such a heavy mountain of manure to shovel. Every time it looks like an actual news story might be able to break through the cover that the mainstream media has put over that news story, the immediate response is for them to look at each other and say, okay, there's a chance this might actually get out. And if it gets out, what are we going to do about it? Well, what we'll do is we'll accuse Donald Trump of doing it first, so that when the actual accusation of Russian collusion, Ukrainian collusion, and all the rest of it finally comes to light, it's just going to make him look like he's just a petty lunatic who's just tossing back serious accusations just because he's so guilty. This strategy is extremely effective over the short term. And when I say the short term, I mean a decade or so. Goebbels and Hitler found out that you can lie to the German people, and the bigger lie you tell, the more they'll believe it. And this got them not only power, but got them pretty much control of almost all of Europe. And that was the high water mark probably around the time of Stalingrad. And after that, they paid the price for this. Now, I'm not suggesting that Joe Biden's going to end up in a bunker someplace, but I am suggesting that this pattern is now so pronounced, and that so many half of the American people are convinced that Donald Trump's a crook. Okay, that's the way the media wind is blowing, and it's a 60-knot headwind. But there is also so much smoke around Obama, Biden, Clinton, those names, that the other half of the country is utterly convinced, and I think on the basis of firm evidence, which certainly doesn't seem to exist in the case of Donald Trump, or else we would have seen it, big evidence that the entire Democratic machine has been, certainly during the entire time of Barack Obama, has been doing what the progressive movement does. This is what, Barack Obama was a community organizer. Now, what does that mean? The term we used to use for that person was an agitator, a person who would go in and stir up a lot of trouble and get people completely ginned up about something, come at him with a apparent solution. If only they'd vote for me, he'll go get the money and come back and do this. This is business as usual for the Democrats. Just look up Tammany Hall and Boss Tweed and see that this is how the progressive business mind works. The progressive business mind is either too lazy or too stupid to go out and make a product, compete with other people who are selling a product, provide excellent customer service. They're not built that way. They don't get it. What they do, what their vision of business is, I'm going to go into politics. When I'm in politics, I can write the law. And when I write the law, whatever business I happen to be associated with is going to benefit, and that's how I'm going to get paid. And
Bill,
this is
Bill,
this
what
has
I'm
been
suggesting
the pattern
is
forever.
that Joe Biden, and I'm just trying to take this, give him full value and credibility for what he's saying. I'm suggesting that Joe Biden not only doesn't think he did anything wrong, but doesn't think Hunter did anything wrong either, but knows he has to come up with some sort of response, and looks across the Potomac at the Trump children and says, hey, what a great opportunity. I know I'm clean. I know Hunter's clean, but look at those Trump kids. Man, they are knee deep in foreign business entanglements. Let's turn this on them by publicly declaring that my administration will not allow any family members to participate in foreign operations, knowing full well that Ivanka, Eric, and Don Jr. are not pulling out of their foreign operations.
Well, now let's examine the evidence against your position. First of all, Joe Biden's career has not done anything to warrant blind trust in the guy. I mean, the very beginning of Biden's national career was when he was actually, I think if he wasn't the front runner, he was up there. He was a real serious contender for president of the United States, and it was revealed that he stole other people's ratings. He just liked it. He stole it. He knew he was stealing it, and he stole it anyway. He didn't think he'd get caught, so he stole it anyway. And this has been Biden's position forever. Biden has made up stories about things that happened and didn't happen. He makes up stories about being places he wasn't, and so on and so forth. Every one of them is the same. Every one of them is Joe, straight Joe, tough Joe, fighting for the common man. Victor Davis Hanson put together a column of a series of these kind of stories that Joe Biden has told, going all the way back to Corn Pop, and it's consistently the same, and it's consistently invented. It's consistently wrong. It's a lie. Now, I will grant you that there are people, and Joe Biden likely is one of them, that lie so frequently and so consistently that they very soon start believing this lie, that they actually start believing that this is what actually happened. That's possibility, I suppose, but that doesn't bear evidence. Now, as far as your suggestion goes, that he realizes that, hey, my kids are clean. What about those Trump kids? The reason that I don't believe that part of your story, Scott, is because the evidence would indicate that that's not true. The one thing we can be certain of is that every single magnifying glass, every single reporter on the face of this nation was looking into Donald Trump, Donald Trump's children, Donald Trump's wives, and anybody associated with him whatsoever. So my contention is that if the press, the entire press, if the entire might of an entire sector of the economy, the news media, is focused on finding the slightest iota of criminal activity or even a whiff of it among Donald Trump, his sons, his wife, and his daughter, and have come up with nothing, while at the same time, we have convincing, repeated evidence that they're doing everything in their power to protect the Democratic nominee, then I say this position that Joe Biden is squeaky clean, his son is squeaky clean, let's go after the Trump kids, I just don't think there's any evidence for that position at all. None.
Final question.
Sure.
Simultaneously, virtually simultaneously with this announcement that he made about the Biden administration's ethical scruples, he has also for the first time publicly come out in support of impeachment proceedings against President Trump. And he said, Donald Trump once said that he could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot a guy and his supporters wouldn't have a problem with that. Well, he's shooting holes in our Constitution and he should be impeached. One might read this bill as him looking over his shoulder and seeing Betsy Warren coming on fast, and he's got to do something. How do you see it?
I see it as him looking over his shoulder and seeing genuine criminal charges coming on fast. That's what I see. The vehemence of this response. And this is something that I feel you can, I'd certainly try my best. I'm certainly not willing to say I succeed, but I am telling you that I try my best to look at these things dispassionately as much as I can. And when I look at the degree of heat generated about impeachment on the basis of evidence that is so slender it essentially doesn't exist, I have to ask myself, why is this entire party now on this bandwagon now? If this is hurting them politically, and it clearly is, why is this worth the strategy? Why is this game worth the candle? What is it that is driving this impeachment fever? And I think that the thing that's driving it now is the fact that there is an attorney general who actually seems to work for the American people. At the very least, he's not at the beck and call of the leaders of the Democratic Party. Now, you could say he's at the beck and call of the leaders of the Republican Party. I'm fine with that. But at least there is somebody looking into something, and that somebody has some legal authority. So I think the entire Trump thing, the entire impeach Trump thing, all of it is a smokescreen laid out by destroyers to protect the battleships. And the battleships are Joe Biden's influence peddling, Hillary Clinton's influence peddling, whether or not Barack Obama had any influence peddling done, I don't know. I certainly suspect that his house with Tony Resco and all the rest of this stuff that no one ever really got into is pretty clear evidence of all of that. So, yes, I'm sure it helps him with Elizabeth Warren. And if Elizabeth Warren hasn't come out on impeachment yet, has she? She made a statement on it?
I have a hard time following all 47 of those people. I'm not sure.
I do too. If Warren does not openly call for impeachment, then Warren is a smarter candidate than I originally gave her credit for. But I suspect that that's not going to be a tenable position for the Democrats in the primary. And look, elections are all about who you vote against. I wish it weren't true, but it is. Many studies have indicated that the primary motivation for people to go and vote is to make sure that the other person doesn't get into office. And Joe Biden, is the poster child for this theory. Is there anybody in this country who's enthusiastic about Joe Biden as president? Or is all of his support contained merely in the group of people who think he's the one who's most likely to be able to beat Donald Trump, who they despise? So people vote against what they hate. That's what motivates people to get out. And I mentioned this in an earlier show, but I think there's a lot of truth to it. I heard a discussion about a week or two ago over lunch where somebody had said if the Kavanaugh character assassination had happened a month later, in other words, 1 month closer to the election, then Republicans would have kept the House because the level of indignation was so high. I think that's a profoundly feasible theory. So what this whole thing has done is fire up the Republican base, not just in defense of Donald Trump, although that's a large part of it, but has fired up the entire right side of the country, not so much at the thought of losing Trump as the thought of this ongoing coup d'etat against an election that was the will of the American people. They will not stand for it. I'm not talking about the American people. We'll stand for just about anything. These elitist progressives will not stand for the fact that the American people voted them out of office and went with somebody else. And the person they went with is not Donald Trump's staunchest supporters. I would imagine would agree that at least in terms of decorum, he is maybe not the most presidential candidate ever in the history of this country. And I don't care. And they don't care either. We don't care because he's the only guy who could have beaten Hillary Clinton because he's the only guy who fought back. But my point is that no one is saying that this is what the country needs. No one's saying that Biden is the last hope of America. They're just saying it because they think they can beat the guy who they hate. So what they have sown, they will also reap. And I suspect that this story will be played out in November of next year, just 12 months from now? 13, 14 months from now? 13 months. And then we'll know. But this is much bigger than the Kavanaugh thing. Number one, it's much more serious. And number two, it's aimed at Donald Trump personally. And people personally support President Trump and support him with an emotional passion that is astonishing, really, only because they see in him a hope that the United States is not lost to this endless, invisible bureaucracy of Harvard-educated idiots who in their little skull and bones meetings or in their college faculty rooms have determined the fate of the country in advance and am not even going to go through even the motions of asking the American people that make this country work how they feel about it. That's where the support for Donald Trump is. The emotional support for Donald Trump, in my opinion, certainly in my case, comes from the fact that I have put my hopes on this person only because he seems to be willing to fight against these forces that have determined a long time ago that the American people aren't capable of making their own decisions, that they know what's best for everybody. As long as they continue to work hard and pay their taxes, then everything will just be fine. So yes, it's important. And yes, I think the impeachment thing is a mistake. And yes, I think that the whole thing with Hunter Biden is a preemptive attack, or at the very least a preemptive announcement to soften the blow that Hunter has done a little more cash hunting in a different part of the world, and that this is going to stick to Biden whether he likes it or not.
Well, to wrap up here, I just want to build on the squeaky, clean, transparent environment of the Obama-Biden White House and confess that we here at BillWhittle.com do have some foreign entanglements. To my knowledge, we have members in Australia, in Israel, in parts of Europe, in Britain, in Scandinavia, and other countries. And those people have certainly swayed us to express exactly what we feel when we feel it and say whatever we wish. And so we are grateful for the members of BillWhittle.com who have made it possible for us to do that. If you'd like to join their ranks, go to BillWhittle.com. And this week we have actually kind of opened the portal a little wider. If you go there as a non-member, you will have access to all the videos on the site that are posted on YouTube as well. You won't have access to member comments. You won't have access to the member blog and some other new features that are coming along for members only. But you will be able to use that website for its intended purposes and get to know us a little better. And if you'd like to, You can click that Become a Member link and give us a shot for 30 days. If you find that it's not well worth your investment, we will cheerfully issue a refund for your 1 month's membership. And the reason why we offer that so boldly is because almost nobody asks for a refund. They kind of like it. So for Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.
And we've turned away literally hundreds of offers from Chinese financial firms. Hundreds.
Most of them represented by children of the Bidens.
That's exactly right.